Let me ask you a quick question. What's your average daily screen time on your phone? Maybe not today, but yesterday's, last week's, last month's, because I bet it's higher than you think it is. Now, obviously, there's days where there's exceptions because some days you're away from your phone completely. Maybe you're out on a hike one day, or you're on holiday, or whatever it might be, or some days you're at home and you're doing nothing. That's understandable. But if there's an average, is it higher than you expected it to be? Did you aim higher and it's actually lower? In that case, maybe bravo. But generally, it's probably higher than you expected it to be. And there's a reason for this. You know, it's no coincidence that all of these social media platforms design their apps this way. And it's no coincidence that they are consciously making efforts to make these apps as attention grabbing as possible. They want to hijack our attention to make sure that we're spending as long as possible on their apps. Even the most friendly of perceived apps are the most hijacking of our attention. They are the ones that grab us the most because they are being perceived as the ones that they want to share the news. They won't allow you to share your posts as and when, but actually, because they are coming across that way, they are the ones that are hijacking the most of your attention because they're being perceived as the one that is the most likable in this case. It's kind of like a paradox of being away from social media in that case. The ones that don't care about how long you're on social media end up enticing you to be on social media the most. There's irony to that. So, really, when it comes to getting your attention back and when it comes to procrastination, there's really only a few things you can do. Now, let's look at a difference between a highly successful person versus the average person. And by highly successful, I mean, let's say, one of these ultra productive corporate types of people. They work in the city. They time block their day by the 30-minute or 15-minute block. They have 20 or 30 meetings in a day. They've been chauffeured around from work to meetings, this, and that. Get up at 6:30 in the morning, go to the gym, do this, that. Their day is blocked perfectly. Now, a lot of these people have personal assistants, executive assistants, because they're making hundreds of thousands, if not millions per year. They can afford these types of things. And often, because of these people in their lives, maybe their families, maybe their assistants as a whole, they're able to help them by removing as many distractions as possible from their daily lives. And because they have got this level of wealth or this income and this status, they're able to hire these people so that because they've removed their distractions, they're able to focus on what they want to focus on. So because they have all this stuff, they have the almost privilege of being able to have all these distractions removed. So it makes their life so much simpler to deal with. But what if there was a way that you can do this without all the help? And just you can get control of your attention again. And you don't have to deal with procrastination. You don't need other people to have to limit it all for you. You can simply take control of your time and therefore your attention again and be able to focus on what you want to focus on throughout the day, throughout the weeks and months and years of your life without the need for anybody to limit it for you. So, in a sense, you're one ahead or multiple steps ahead even of these highly successful people right now. Because at the moment, they're hyper productive and ultra successful because of the limited distractions in their life. But that's because of the support barriers they have in their life. So what if you almost one up them and instead regained the control yourself without the need for assistance or these high income executive assistants to limit the distractions in your day? What if you made the conscious decision to be able to focus on what you want to focus on and regain the control yourself so that you don't need to rely on anybody for the sake of your own attention and control of your time and your day. So I want to go over a few different things that you can do to be able to do that. Now, I'm not here to claim to be some sort of productivity guru and savant of my attention when it comes to being productive. We're all human ultimately, and there is a reason those highly productive people still need assistance. Even I would love to be in that position, but I have had to learn myself to be as productive as I can and work out how I can stick to routines and stick to schedules and just generally have the ability to focus on what I want when I want to. And I've been fortunate enough to learn enough things to put myself in a position where I can focus on what I want when I want, to an extent. There's always a limit to it. But I want to go through a few different steps you can take in order to actually have more control over your attention and generally be able to focus on what you want to focus on when you want to focus on it. So, in order to not need to have people manage your distractions for you, you can manage it yourself and actually get ahead of them in that sense. So, you can do it before they ever could. And you can manage your distractions yourself so that you can get much further ahead than anybody else. And you can be in the best position for yourself and actually manage your time, regain your attention, and regain control so that you can focus on what you want to focus on whenever you want to focus on it. So, like I mentioned in this one moment a minute ago, this is all about procrastination. And this is what all these apps do. They make us procrastinate. Because they are trying to hijack our attention by making us stay on the apps for as long as possible, they make us procrastinate. You know, we open the app, the moment we wake up in the morning, we get our phone and we're scrolling away forever and ever and ever. Then we lose track of time. It's been 5 minutes, it's been 15 minutes, it's been half an hour. Oh, I need to have a shower, I need to have breakfast, this, and that. Maybe it's lunchtime, maybe it's dinner time, whatever time it might be in the day. As soon as we open the app, we're lost. And you may even notice on apps like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, there's the refresh feed thing. And there is no coincidence that it is just like in a casino with the slot machines. When you pull the lever down and the slots go. It's exactly the same, and it's no coincidence that it's like that. There are psychologists that are hired and work for these social media platforms to ensure that you spend as long on their platforms as is humanly possible. And it's up to us to be able to identify these and take control of them so that we have the awareness to know when we have been on the app for long enough. Or to be able to go one step further and not just be aware of it, but then use that awareness to know what to actually do when we're on the app. So that we're not just aimlessly flicking away and scrolling through, liking, post sharing, and going on stories, this, and that. Because otherwise we're just on these apps for hours and hours and hours on end. And then we're going on to the next app and the next app and the next app. And the psychologists that work for these platforms, these companies, they're aware of this and they know that we're just going to go on to the next app, the next app, the next app, the next app, go back to this app and procrastinate forever and ever and ever. So how do we actually control this? Well, we got to start by having the awareness of what they're actually doing in the first place. So like I said, they want us on the apps for as long as possible because they want to make money off of us through the advertisers, the people that pay their bills, the people that make them the money. They're paying advertisers. The advertisers are paying them, so that they can advertise on these platforms so that they can make money. So we have to be aware of what they're actually doing to attract our attention in the first place and keep us on their platforms. Then once we know that, we can be aware of how they keep us on the platforms, all the features, all the ways in which they keep giving us these cheap dopamine hits with every new piece, with every new post we get. They try to make it better than the last post in the feed we have, so that each time we get a much higher increase in the dopamine hit we get. So the dopamine spike in our dopamine receptor, is more and more and more, in a way, suppressed. It's just much higher dopamine hit each time. And that's why we keep going back to the apps, because we want that dopamine hit each time. And it's the same when it comes to notifications. You'll get a notification, and naturally, this all goes back to our survival instincts and our tribal nature. We want to be accepted, we want to be liked, we don't want to be out of the tribe. So getting likes, getting reshares, getting people liking our thing, it's all dopamine, 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 dopamine. So being aware of this is the first step to actually knowing how to control it in the first place. Knowing that every notification you get is a cheap dopamine hit. Knowing that every time you're scrolling, and there's actually like a kind of psychology behind how the dopamine works of this, is that your dopamine works by, and again, I'm no expert on this, it's just from like podcast clips I've seen. So again, do your own research. But one of them was from Andrew Huberman, that said when we're scrolling social media and we're looking, through our feed, whatever the algorithm is pushing our way, we'll look at one thing, we'll stop on it, and then we'll scroll a bit more, stop on another thing, scroll on another thing, and find a new thing. Whatever caught our attention and spiked the dopamine level in us, there may have been something before that would have caught our attention that if we hadn't seen this clip or this whatever piece of content, this wouldn't have actually caught our attention as much as the previous one if it wasn't spiking our dopamine as much. So there's this crazy fact about our dopamine that something that would have caught our attention later didn't catch our attention as much because of something that caught our attention way more and spiked our dopamine before. So it's like something being like a 3 out of 10 for dopamine at the beginning, the next clip being let's say an 8 out of 10 for dopamine, and then the clip after being a 7 out of 10. The 7 out of 10 is still more than the first one, but because the second one was so much higher for the dopamine hit, the third one wasn't as exciting, even though if we didn't see that middle one, the third one, if it came second, would have been higher. But because we've spiked it in the second one, it's numbed our senses in terms of the dopamine hit. And this is how social media works. It's a bit like if you are used to getting many, many, many notifications every day, if you're constantly posting all the time and you're getting retweets, likes, reshares, all this stuff. If you put a post up on social media, across social media, and you get 10 likes in an hour, that's amazing. You get the dopamine hit from 10 likes in an hour. 5 hours later, you get another 100 likes. But then an hour later, you get 15 likes. You don't get the same dopamine hit from those third 15 likes because you got the 100 likes in the middle. And this is how our dopamine works. And it's actually a constant addiction to wanting the next hit. Now, a dopamine receptor works in this way because we're just constantly wanting the bigger hit. And it's why we get addicted to certain things. It's why, like, adult content is hyper addictive, because it spikes the dopamine, I think, nearly as much or more than, like, cocaine does. Don't quote me on this, obviously do your own research, but if you want to. But because it spikes our dopamine so much, we just get addicted to it because we want that same level, almost like a level of high. And so the only way you can calm it down almost and kind of reset our dopamine is by kind of detoxing in a way. And this is where the whole kind of dopamine detox protocol, framework, whatever you want to call it, mindset comes from. But in simple terms, it basically just means limiting it so that we can kind of bring down the level of dopamine hit we've been getting, kind of reset our receptors, dopamine receptors, and actually regain a certain level of reward we want. Because if you're constantly just an addict for the feed and the algorithm and this content that's spiking your dopamine so much, then all of this lower level stuff that might just be basic notifications or whatever it might be doesn't mean anything to you anymore. And all these basic levels of reward we're numb to and we're losing our sensitivity for. It would be like if every single month of the year you got a new supercar. But after a year, getting a new supercar doesn't mean anything to you. You've already got 12 supercars. You don't need the 13th and the 14th one. Whereas if once in your life you're going to get, a supercar every 5 years, then it's going to be much bigger, If every year you get a supercar compared to every month, or every 5 years you get a supercar, you can see the difference in how it works. Now, it works the same way that third versus the second versus the third. If the third was higher than the first, it would have still spiked it. But because the second one was the highest, we don't feel the third as much, even though it was higher than the first one. And that's how your dopamine works. So we have to realize that this is what the social media platforms are doing. And this is how our dopamine works. So if we want to regain control of our attention, we have to realize this and be aware of this so that we can control it and kind of understand the chemistry of the dopamine receptor, understand how dopamine works, and understand how the social media platforms are doing this. Because then, if you do, you can catch yourself and then be aware of how to then stop. Now, obviously, I understand from personal experience, it is difficult to stop. It is self-control. If you are scrolling through social media and content and it's funny, it's engaging, it's humorous, it's dark humor, it's whatever it might be, it's funny, it's hilarious, it spikes the dopamine, engages the emotion, and it's funny. But when we are aware of it and we catch ourselves, we are able to practice the self-control and then build up a mental muscle here that allows us to grow that mental muscle, just like a physical rep at the gym, and actually gain control of this ability to get our attention back. So just like going to the gym every day or a couple of times or a few times a week, you do your reps, you're putting in the reps. And then, not in a week, not in 2 weeks, sometimes not even in months, but over the course of months and months and months, your muscles grown. You're able to only lift 30k before, now you can lift 35, now 45, now you've got a massive, now you're lifting like double what you used to or triple what you used to in the space of 6 months or a year or however long. And this is all because you did the reps and you increased your tolerance for how much you can take. And it works exactly the same with the mental reps, with getting your attention back. It's by feeling the awareness of I've been scrolling. Okay, I've watched 5 clips now, it's been 2 minutes. I could come off, but it feels so good. But I'm going to come off. I don't like it, it's just like a physical rep, but it's a mental rep. I'm going to make the decision to stop and focus on something else. I don't like it, but I'm going to focus on it. It's just like a physical rep, but it's the one for the brain. And when you start that process with everything, not just social media scrolling, but anything that basically feels good, it's the reward system in our brain. When you start counting those reps, when you start putting in the reps, every day you do this, every time, if you make a habit of putting in these mental reps, you will start to notice that it gets easier and easier and easier to stop yourself from scrolling. You'll end up just looking at your phone, realizing what you might have just done, like you're about to pick it up and just unlock your phone without even thinking about it, because you catch yourself in the middle of a task and you realize you just got bored, and then you go to pick up your phone, and then you might just pick it up, not even unlock it, or maybe the Face ID unlocks it for you or whatever, but you're just on the home screen. And then you go, I was about to just go on the random app and start scrolling, or go on TikTok, or go on Insta, or go on whatever it might be and start scrolling. You catch yourself before you even do it in the end. And then the next level is where you're doing something, you realize you get bored. And before you even go to look down at your phone, you've realized you got bored. Now, I'm saying this out of personal experience because I got from the point of being able to be, on my phone, I'd be on here, I'd be on social media, I'd be scrolling through DMs and whatever it might be, I'd be scrolling through content or whatever it might be, scrolling away. You can even hear it. I just volume was still up, but you're scrolling away, and you go from that to then maybe a matter of days or a couple of weeks later, you've got the mental You're building the mental muscle, and then you realize you go onto the app, and you're like, I was about to start scrolling, and then maybe a couple of weeks later, or a couple of days later even, you're doing something, and then you look down at your phone, and then you're about to pick it up, and then over months and months, you end up getting to the point where you've built the mental muscle so much that you've actually able to realize when you get bored during a task. You're not even at the point now where you're just kind of subconsciously, without even thinking, just you end up on your phone bored scrolling. You can now recognize when you even just get overwhelmed by a basic part of a task, or you start getting bored. And this is what happens when you build the mental muscle. You can go from just aimlessly scrolling away to being able to catch yourself in the act when you've opened the app, to then catch yourself just by looking down at your phone or unlocking your phone, to then catching yourself when you get bored or overwhelmed by a piece of a task. And then this is the beginning process in getting back control of your time and your attention in this case as well. Because we'll get overwhelmed by a piece of a task because it gets overwhelming or a bit boring. We look down at our phone, we start scrolling, and normally we're doing all these things without thinking about it. But when we've built the mental muscle, we now have control over what we're doing and our attention. And instead of making the comfortable and easy, fun decision of just going into the app and playing around, we now have control over, oh, this is okay, I'm bored. Okay, let's not look at my phone. Let's not look over at any social media app. Let's not go on my phone and text that person or reply to that person. And that is how we gain the control. That's how we regain the ability to focus on whatever we want to focus on. So being aware, because I've rambled a bit, of what the social media apps are doing, and then building the mental reps once we're aware of this to be able to regain our attention, build the self-control up. Now, these mental reps are the case for anything, not just our attention with social media, but just our level of self-control as a whole. So regardless of what you're procrastinating with, you can use these mental reps to build and build and build and build to the point where you can actually do stuff almost without thinking. Now, obviously, this basically just means bringing the subconscious to a conscious level. Because most of the time, our fight or flight mode or our comfort zone stops us from doing something. So, for instance, if you choose to do like ice baths or something, or cold showers or cold plunges or whatever it might be, or an intense workout or a cold morning jog, at the beginning, you don't want to do these things because fight or flight or your comfort. You just don't want to do. Why would I want to do that? That's disgusting. That's discomfort. That's uncomfortable. But when you start building the mental reps and you start doing it, you actually start attaching the activity to the reward of having done the activity. For instance, cold plunges are not fun. I haven't done ice baths, but I've done cold plunges, and they're not fun. However, the science and biochemistry behind it all is that a cold plunge, even just for 5 minutes, or even just, I think, for 3 minutes, spikes the dopamine in such a healthy way that we get the dopamine rush in a healthy way, not just aimlessly scrolling on social media for hours, which means that we are able to focus on stuff for hours and hours and hours. It might not actually be the dopamine there. I'm pretty sure it's dopamine there because there's kind of basically positive and negative when it comes to regaining focus. And a cold plunge, so do the research there, but a cold plunge allows you to end the cold plunge and have focus for hours. And that's why all these hyper successful people do like cold plunges, then saunas and all this stuff. Not just detoxifying for health reasons, but it allows them to then focus for hours. They're not on drugs, they're not on any of this. In fact, the body is just being the drug almost for this exposure to whatever it might be, cold or hot, exposure. So when you want to do something that is uncomfortable, these mental reps you've been practicing through just like social media and attention grabbing things, we can apply to doing things we don't want to do. And when we build the mental muscle, we're able to, over time, train ourselves to do something without even, it becomes easy. Like at the beginning, like if you have never worked out in your life, doing 10 press-ups or sit-ups feels like hell. But if you've been working out for 3 years straight, 10 press ups, you can do that you can do that when you sleep. Like, it just becomes like, oh, I've accidentally done 50 press ups. Oops. Like, it becomes so easy because you're just trained. And it's the exact same thing with your brain, building up the mental reps, building up the mental resilience. This is what self-control is ultimately. You start with just social media and scrolling. You start with, I can't be asked to work out today. I can't be asked to get up out of bed. And in the end, you build the mental muscle up so much that you have the self-control and the discipline to basically be able to do what you want, when you want, wherever you want to, and you don't even have to think about it, really. If you want to do something, even if it's discomfort, even if there is discomfort involved or it's uncomfortable, you don't even have to motivate yourself by thinking of the outcome. You can just do things that you don't want to do, knowing that you want to really do them, really without having to second guess yourself or have any second thoughts, because the discipline you build is so much stronger than the discomfort feeling. And this is like the pain of discipline versus the pain of regret. Like, if you really don't want to do something bad enough, do you want to do it? Do you want to not do it more than the pain of regret of having not done it? And this is kind of the whole self-help motivational stuff anyway. Like, the discipline of starting versus the pain of having not done it and regretting you didn't do it. So when you're building up these mental reps and you're building the mental muscle, you're basically building up your discipline and your level of self-control so that you have control over not just, like I said, social media, but over anything that has formerly been the choice between comfort and discomfort. Even if you know you should have done something, and this is why you might feel regret or shame or any negative emotion, you built up the mental muscle, you've instilled the self-control in yourself, and you've built the discipline up so that you can basically do anything you want to do that is normally uncomfortable in your head, but the discomfort doesn't matter anymore because the muscle has built so big. And that is ultimately how we regain control of our attention. We build up the mental muscle so much that we are just able to do things regardless of how we feel. Because ultimately that is self-control. Doing things regardless of how we feel about them. Normally we can do this because of passion or because of the determination or motivation we have in the moment. That's why when you're extremely motivated, you can do anything. And in a way, motivation is a bit like momentary discipline. When you are highly motivated to do something, it's a bit like having all the discipline in the world. You know, you'd rip your arm off if you had to feel better. Like, motivation helps so much, but motivation is momentary. It's temporary feelings. So the way we have basically unlimited motivation is we build up the mental muscle. Because at the beginning, we think about the outcome we want. We think about, oh, that was a mental, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to turn off my phone and focus on the task. But we start with the smallest possible thing. We start with, are we scrolling? Let's stop scrolling. Okay, let's just stop scrolling and do something else. Let's stop scrolling. Because ultimately, it's boredom. That's all it really is. We're just bored. So do something that's not boring for a minute. You know, focus on anything. So we start with the small thing, building the mental rep. It's uncomfortable at the beginning, but it's the same as the discomfort of like a push-up or a sit-up or whatever, you know, muscle you're working. It's uncomfortable until the level of discomfort rises, basically. So in the end, what you are able to handle is exponentially higher than what it used to be. At the beginning, it's difficult to be aware of knowing that you want to come off the app, but you just can't resist it. It's irresistible. And in the end, it's the difference between, I want to go and run a marathon and get in a cold plunge beforehand. Like, the level of discipline rises. And it's the same with almost every area of our life, whether it's confidence, fear, whatever it might be. You know, right now, I could never, like the idea of skydiving and jumping out of a plane, something I want to do in my life, but it still scares the hell out of me. Whereas when you build your tolerance for this and you build up the discipline and the self-control for this, I mean, self-control and the kind of motivation to want to do these types of things, slightly different areas, but generally, you build up the mental muscle for this stuff and you get accustomed to it. Because this is all it is ultimately. You're building up the muscle and you become accustomed to doing certain things. It's like the idea of public speaking to me, the idea of speaking in front of anybody, and unless they're people I know, is daunting, or has been daunting to me. But because I've done it a few times in my life now, at least in front of a room full of people, I'm aware of it and I can recall it. Obviously, I'm not doing it a lot, but I can recall what it feels like. So I am not as anxious and in fear of it as I used to be. But obviously, I'm not doing it every day or every week or every month. So it has fallen back a little bit. But it's about building up the mental muscle so that you are more accustomed to it and you're aware of what it feels like so that you almost forget what it used to feel like. But that original feeling now just applies to a new level of it because all we're doing is increasing our tolerance for it. You know, it's just increasing tolerance so you can handle more and more and more, get stronger and stronger and stronger. And we get stronger so that we can do it ourselves. And we don't need to rely on anybody else. We don't need to rely on assistants, PAs, virtual assistants, whatever it might be. We can do what we want regardless of how we feel because we are now disciplined and we have the self-control. So we can basically do anything we want. And in my opinion, this is what I'm trying to build to. I think anybody should want to try and instill discipline and self-control beyond the basic level because it literally changes your life. If you've been an anxious person, lacking confidence, small like me in my life, learning to be more outgoing, learning to have the confidence, learning to have the self-esteem to talk, learning to be able to share my ideas and my thoughts on what I've been learning, it's invigorating. It allows you to be the person that you might have wanted to be without sounding too cliche motivational. But generally and genuinely, it's kind of an uplifting feeling to be able to just do whatever you've envisioned wanting to do, but never having the kind of confidence or not wanting to do it, kind of hide away and shy away. So really self-control and building discipline is one of the best things you can ever do. Not just for the sake of getting off your phone and just basic social media for procrastination, but just for having control of your life. And I think having the self-control and having the discipline to be able to do what you want whenever you want to, regardless of how you feel, is one of the most powerful mental abilities in the world ever. Period. Imagine being able to do what you want when you want to, regardless of how you feel. Get up in the morning, boom, gym, I don't care, go. Like, eat this annoying, disgusting meal that's good for me, go. Cold plunge, go. I feel amazing, go. Works amazing, go. Yes, this, that. And that's self-control. That's just building a discipline. And it starts with the first mental rep. Just, let me get off social media. Okay. Didn't want to, but I'm off. And building this habit every single day. If you have to, and I'll make a video about habits as well if I haven't, if I've already made it, I'll link it below. But it's part of habits, replacing a habit. If you need to, if you want to start a new habit, replace scrolling, replace attention hijacking activities with something else. Do you want to start reading? Okay, then instead of when you put your phone down, start reading for 5 minutes. Or whenever you are bored, you immediately start doing that thing you wanted to do. And you just stack habits together. But I'll talk more about that. And if I haven't already published a video about habits, then just, I'll publish it very soon, but it'll be in the links below if I haven't done it already. Or comment if you want to see it sooner if I've not uploaded it. But there we go. So be aware of what the social media platforms are doing and how they hijack your attention. Start building up the mental reps because it just instills discipline and you improve your level of self-control. And then this applies to everywhere in life. Fear, your self-esteem, what you're able to pull off in life, and basically being able to do things that you want to do and need to do regardless of how you feel in the moment. And that is an insanely powerful ability. Discipline and self-control. So that whenever you need to do something, you do it regardless. And that's what we're doing. We're choosing to do something now. And when we choose to act now, instead of in 5 minutes, in 10 minutes, or in an hour, we act. And when you learn to start just acting, when you learn to just do, the motivation required to start dips. I'll talk about that in another video, maybe about the motivation required to start a task. But by doing something now, choosing to act, choosing to just put down the phone, doesn't feel great, but immediately we all start feeling the benefits of it and start building the mental reps. So I hope this helps. Don't want to make this like a 45-minute long video or anything, but there we go. I hope this helps. And yeah, again, I'm at the beginning of this myself. I was learning a lot about kind of procrastination and motivation and discipline over these past couple of years. 2020 was when the end of 2020 was when I properly went down the kind of rabbit hole of self-help and personal development and business. But in the last couple of years, I've been trying my best to kind of work more on this. But we're all human and it does take time. But I'm really trying over this past year properly, but especially this past 2 years, to really work on this. So I wish you the best of luck with trying your best with this. And yeah, well, if you want to comment about your own progress on this, then feel free to. And I'd love to know your journey about this. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.